Welcome to FPTV New Releases, where it's my pleasure to be joined by the one, the only, James Tynion IV. How are you, mate?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks very much for joining us, mate. We've got a wealth of things to talk about, not all of them in this interview, but we'd really like to kick off. When I say we, for some reason I've got this habit of using the royal we on these things, but it's just me. There's no one else here. If you could tell us all about Razorblades, which you can order from the links attached to this interview.
So Razorblades is sort of my quarantine special project of the year. It's something that back around March and April, when things were looking pretty dicey for the whole comics industry, and a lot of projects were sort of being put on pause. I wanted to get working on something, and I wanted to do something that I could work on with all of my friends in the industry who I was starting to realize I wasn't going to get to see all year, not at all of the conventions and all of that. I wanted to create an excuse to just like make cool stuff. And so I've been thinking about doing something in the self-publishing space for a while, just because a lot of it is me wanting to understand all of the nuts and bolts of how the comic industry works, and down to like actually working with printers and distribution and all of that. Just I want to know how every step of how the process works. And I also think that just in general, there's been a lack of platforms for the weirder creator-owned ideas that different creators have right now. And I think horror has always been the medium where some of the most experimental and interesting new work starts coming from. So and I'm a horror nerd. Obviously, you can tell from half of my library are horror books. But so it all sort of really came together, and into like how can we create something that work on with all of our friends while the whole industry is shut down, and just make something special and interesting. And the product was Razorblades, the horror magazine.
Yeah, what a supremely laudable thing to do. I mean, particularly, I would say as a creator, getting into what can be very frustrating fabric of how you print and distribute comic books and the logistical and negotiative nightmares therein. It's such an interesting thing to want to dig into. Now, I know, from our previous conversations that there's a lot of business in your family background, so, I'm assuming that genetically you might be better armed than a lot of creators are to deal with that kind of stuff, right? But I think it's a very bold step to want to grab it with both hands like that.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's something that I see more and more. I think they're being flexible and being able to have the ability to put out my own books, and also having the relationships, specifically myself, with all of the retailers who sell my books, like it personally, rather than through a company, has benefited tremendously. And it's something that, especially while I'm on a big project like Batman for DC, being able to then say, it's like, okay, like, yes, I'm on Batman, but here are all of these other projects. Here are all of my other interests. And it's just like, and work with the shops who have seen success in supporting my books, and sort of give them more things that they can sell to their readers. And once you build those relationships, there's a lot that can really come from that. So it's really, really exciting, and it's been a really rewarding process. It's also been rewarding just because the whole first batch, I literally, the first issue, which we released over the summer in a small first printing batch, I shipped all of them out of my own apartment. Just wow. Literally taped all the boxes, stamped all of them and sent them all out. And now I'm working with the distributor because that process was awful. But it was
been a nightmare.
Oh yeah. But it's been a really, really exciting process. And there's a lot of freedom that comes from being able to tap into the work directly, and being able to interact directly with the fans, working directly with the retailers, working directly with the printers. And it's just like, it all is kind of like really centered my focus in terms of the sort of work I want to do. and the sort of direction I see my career going over the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the analogy that I would strike, I think your point is very well made, is that, when you look at the truly interesting, say, careers in the movie business, that it's people who grabbed hold of their careers, set up their own production companies, whether it was James Stewart or Kirk Douglas back in the day, and overseeing the whole process and got to know all of it. And I think, that gives you a great degree of control over your work, but it makes it a much more pleasant process as well, because you don't want to give up your entire life as good as it can be for getting a name on the map. You don't want to give your entire life in service of big, global corporations, right?
Yes, exactly. 100. I couldn't have said it better. And and going and down to even my work at Image, like my new series. Excuse me. The Department of Truth. You have the Tiny Onion logos on the inside of the book. I think that's a logo that you're going to start seeing at multiple publishers with multiple pieces of my work, and it's something that I want to start building that as this is where you can get my work, and also the like-minded work, and that's where Razorblades is the beginning of something for me. It is something where I also want to be able to use my position in the industry to support the creation of really weird and interesting work, and that's one of the most exciting things about working on Razorblades has been bringing in all of these horror illustrators who I've been following for years on Twitter and Instagram, and most of them had never done comic work or cover work and all of that. And I started bringing them in for illustrations in these issues because their work is just absolutely phenomenal. And it's a cousin to comics. Like, illustration is a cousin to comic art. And now I'm starting to see, since they've popped up in Razorblades, I see companies like Vault and IDW and Dark Horse starting to go after those artists for variant covers, and that honestly makes me thrilled. Is just sort of because that was one of the the creative goals of Razorblades, is if you bring all of these people together, and not just from one corner of the comics industry, because comics can be so separate. Like, at each corner of the comics industry can be so separate from one another. There's the direct market with superheroes and all of that. There's the book market, YA side of things. There's manga. There's the Fantagraphics drawn in quarterly indie alternative side of comics. There's the web comics world, and then there's all of the myriad worlds of illustration that are so vibrant and interesting. But everyone's sort of in their own camp. So I wanted to create a platform that I could sort of bring in work from a bunch of different people. In issue 2 of Razorblades, we have Josh Simmons, who is one of my favorite indie alternative horror creators working right now. And we have, in issue 3, which hasn't come out yet, we're bringing in one of my favorite, author, like award-winning author in the YA space, to come in and do a big horror illustration in the piece. And just being able to sort of be a hub to sort of like, what happens when you just let a bunch of people do interesting work in the same space, and what kind of connections might they start making with one another, and what kind of cool work starts coming out of it. So it has been one of the real pleasures of my career, and I hope that, I hope readers continues to support Razorblades like they have, so I can do even more weird and experimental projects like this in the future.
I mean, I'm sure the reality is that is exactly what is going to happen. I know that myself and Rob Pontefract, who's the mighty head buyer for Forbidden Planet, the mysterious Rob Pontefract, he's a huge fan of your work and just has really been loving what you've been doing with Razorblades. And I think it's a tremendously exciting project. I can see that you're excited by it, but it's to do something that's creatively fulfilling, but has you're trying to make a difference to the industry in which you work, and trying to do something great with your fellow creators as well. I think those are all laudable pursuits, and if the output is something that's as good as this book is, that's got to feel really good, mate.
Oh, it does. It really, really does. And one of the big inspirational paths that led to Razorblades was, at the beginning of all of this, I sat down and I read through From Hell, and I was reading up about one of the best comics ever created. And and I was reading about the process, and I had known, like I could have brought up the fact in a trivia contest that From Hell originated in the pages of the horror anthology Taboo, that was created by Steve Bissette back in the 80s, but I hadn't ever sat down and read all of Taboo. So one of the things I did back at the beginning is I bought a full set on eBay. And I just devoured all of it. And it was seeing that, there is really incredible work that can come out of these sorts of projects that connect unlikely partners together. Because I think today, From Hell's up on the shelf, and we don't think about how unlikely it is. It would be like today if imagine if they announced like Jeff Lemire and Adrian Tomina like we're working on a on a graphic novel together. And it's just like, that's how from different worlds, like Eddie Campbell and Alan Moore work. And seeing them come together and create something, really, like as powerful as that. And that's so slow burn, something that might not have survived, the churn of the direct market as it exists today. But, was able to be kind of, birthed into this world or by Taboo as a magazine. And so, and I'm not saying that anything that comes out of the pages of the first two Razorblades is on the level of From Hell, but I do hope that this is where some people can test some of their raw ideas, and that there might be children of Razorblades in the same way that there are a bunch of graphic novels out in the world that are children of the original Taboo.
Well said, mate. And I think that's a great note to close out on. This has been James Tynion IV talking very eloquently about his work and his creation of Razorblades, which you can order at the links attached to this video. Mate, it's also good to see you. Thanks for dropping in and telling us all about it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Take care, brother. All the best. Bye-bye.